what the climate change models tell us about each individual tree species. So I showed you that map about sugar maple, I showed you that map about white oak. We've got that model, the tree atlas, and we've got a couple other kinds of models that we stitched together to look at which tree species are likely to be winners under climate change and which are more likely to be losers. And this is painting with a very broad brush. These are general trends across a big landscape, but still it's a useful place to start for winners and losers. So you guys are going to work with this list, and basically I'm going to assign you guys each 1/4 of this stand, and you're going to go out and flag trees. So we've got two kinds of flagging for you. Orange if a tree is projected to be more of a loser under the future. Blue if it's projected to be more of a winner. Okay, so after you guys have, I'll divvy you guys up into teams, I'll assign you to 1/4 of this stand, and then you'll walk around it, take a minute to get a feel for it, and then label these trees, and then take a step back, and we'll ask you guys some questions, okay? So, and Naomi and Eric and Doug and I will be kind of roving around.
We will?
Yep, you're going to be teaching.
We will.
Yeah. And asking you guys some questions, okay? PCMB1.
4.
And I can go into more detail about that if you want, but basically PCMB1 is shorthand
Reasonably good at
for a climate scenario that is our rosiest future. It's our best case. Okay?
This is hemlock, it's flat, not a pine, and
So these are, when you see projected increase, projected decrease, that means specifically in this scenario.
That's an actual projection, I mean, like based on a model. And
Yep. In the vulnerability assessment, we've got maps in the whole 9 yards that show what temperature increases and precipitation changes are associated with this. So this is real output.
yeah.
all the way back.
The general temperature. What do you know?
So over the last century, northern Wisconsin has warmed something like 2.5 degrees. So this scenario says about the same amount of warming going forward over the next. So this is like,
So we maintain where we are.
Yep.
Okay.
so you'll see here a breakdown of winners and losers under that scenario, and things that are not expected to change a whole lot. If you have a species that's not expected to change a whole lot, you don't need to mark it. And what you're going to do is you're going to use that white pine as your center post, and then a line going up from there to about this big tree with the red slashes. That's one corner, and then go 90 degrees from there.
Okay, maybe to that other marked orange tree. Yeah.
Out over here somewhere, okay? Any questions? Who here knows their trees?
I'm not too bad. I might need help
Okay.
with some.
Help each other out, ask questions if you need it.
Virtually no change.
Okay, so what, the species that you came across, what percentage would you say were projected to increase versus projected to decrease?
We didn't really find any that were expected to increase.
And how many were expected to decrease?
Balsam fir, and I think that was it.
Was that like 50% of your stand or 20% of your stand?
Well, we did mark the ones that were expected to have little change.
Good.
Very minor.
Just a small amount of decliners?
Yeah.
And group one, what did you guys think about? How many of the trees that you guys looked at and decided what they were, what percentage of them in your stand would you say were increasers versus decreasers?
They're mostly increasers. There was just balsam fir. This was the best case scenario, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So you guys actually found some increasers with what?
Well, the maple, the red, is it the red maple?
Yep, the
Red maple
and the white pine.
and the white pine.
Okay.
What, I forget what else.
Okay, so you guys marked those little changes as
Little change, yeah.
increasers. Okay. Cool. Now for the extreme groups, okay? So extreme climate change, what sort of picture did you guys find in your stands? What percentage of the trees that you looked at were increasers versus decreasers? Any guesses?
I'm gonna make an estimate, like 70% of them were increasers versus 30% of decreasers of the overall trees that we had in our area, but
What increasers did you find?
The increasers we had were the hornbeam, oh gosh, where was it?
I think that was.
I think that was it, but there's a lot of that in there. Yeah,
Okay, so you found a lot of understory.
Right.
a lot of
Increasers.
understory.
How about tree species?
A lot of red maples, and those were iffy, they were on the fence, so those we didn't know.
Balsam fir, quaking aspen,
Yep.
for declines.
How about you guys? If you had to put a guess on it, what percentage would you say you found that were increasers versus decreasers?
I think we said like 90% of what we tagged was to decrease, and then 10% was to increase. And our decreaser was white pine. And increase we found, we think an American elm, and then we
Eastern hornbeam.
yep, hot hornbeam
Hawthorn.
we marked.
And
Okay,
we found one white spruce too, that's on decline, along with balsam fir and eastern white pine. That's all in decline.
so that kind of helps you guys get a sense of how dramatic some of these ranges can be if you go in a stand and you're thinking about what's that full bracket of climate change possibility. You would have a very different perspective if you went in with your cheat sheet versus your cheat sheet. So it's important to try to capture those. The other thing, though, that is important and that we usually have discussions about with people whenever we're talking about climate change and adaptation decisions is that these are painting with a very broad brush across a whole big landscape. This is across all of northern Wisconsin and all of the western UP. Okay, so that's not to say that white pine might increase everywhere or decrease everywhere. You also have to pay attention to what's going on here at the site to think about what's more or less risky. And can you guys think of any ideas? What are some characteristics, what are some local factors that you would want to think about at a particular place that could help you understand what are my climate change risks or what are maybe some opportunities? What would you need to look about that's unique about this place?